I was talking to my neighbor Martha the other day while she was tending to her roses, and she said something that really stuck with me. She looked up from her pruning shears and said, "I wish I'd known then what I know now." That got me thinking, how many of us have felt that way? How many times have we looked back and thought, if only I'd figured this out sooner? Well, today, I want to share something with you that might just change how you approach the rest of your life. We're going to talk about 5 things that took me far too long to learn, but once I did, they made all the difference. And the beautiful thing is, it's never too late to start. You might be sitting there thinking, I'm 65 or 72 or maybe even 80. What's the point of changing now? But here's what I've discovered. Some of the most powerful changes we can make happen exactly when we think it's too late. Life doesn't stop teaching us just because we've reached a certain number of birthdays. The first thing I learned too late was this: your body is not your enemy. For years, I treated my aches and pains like they were prison bars, keeping me locked away from the things I wanted to do. Every morning, I'd wake up and take inventory of what hurt, what felt stiff, what wasn't working quite right. Sound familiar? But then something shifted. I started thinking about my body the way I think about my old pickup truck. It's been with me for decades, it's carried me through countless adventures, and yes, it needs a little more attention now than it used to. But that doesn't mean it's ready for the scrap heap. I remember the day this really hit home. I was watching my grandson play soccer, sitting on those uncomfortable bleachers, when I noticed this woman next to me. She had to be in her 70s, but she was cheering and jumping up like she was 20. After the game, I asked her what her secret was. She laughed and said, "Honey, I move every single day. Not because I have to, but because I want to keep moving." That's when I realized I'd been thinking about exercise all wrong. I'd been approaching it like punishment for getting older, when really it's a celebration of what we can still do. You don't need to train for a marathon or join some intense fitness boot camp. You just need to move in ways that feel good to you. Maybe that's a walk around your neighborhood, checking out how your neighbors' gardens are coming along. Maybe it's dancing to your favorite oldies while you're cooking dinner. Maybe it's playing a round of golf or taking up that yoga class at the community center you've been thinking about for months. The magic isn't in the type of movement, it's in the consistency. Your body wants to move, it's designed to move, and when you give it that gift every day, it pays you back with energy, better sleep, and that feeling of vitality that makes you want to tackle whatever comes next. And speaking of energy, that brings me to the second thing I wish I'd learned sooner. What you eat isn't just fuel, it's medicine. I spent decades thinking that as long as I wasn't gaining weight, I was doing okay. I'd grab whatever was convenient, eat on the run, and never really paid attention to how different foods made me feel. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing patterns. On days when I ate a lot of processed foods or sugary snacks, I'd feel sluggish by afternoon. My mind would feel foggy, like I was trying to think through molasses. But on days when I ate real whole foods, the kind your grandmother would recognize, I felt sharper, more energetic, more like myself. It's not about following some complicated diet or counting every calorie. It's about paying attention to what makes you feel good and what doesn't. Your body is constantly sending you messages. You just have to listen. I started making small changes. Instead of that sugary cereal for breakfast, I'd have some eggs with toast. Instead of reaching for chips when I was watching TV, I'd cut up an apple or grab a handful of nuts. Nothing dramatic, nothing that required me to overhaul my entire life. But here's what surprised me. Those small changes added up to something big. I had more energy for the things I wanted to do. My afternoon slumps became less frequent. I slept better at night. It was like I'd been running on low-quality fuel for years without realizing it, and suddenly I'd upgraded to premium. The third thing that took me too long to figure out might surprise you. Your mind needs exercise just as much as your body does. I used to think that forgetting names or losing track of where I put my keys was just part of getting older. Senior moments, we call them, like they're inevitable. But then I met Frank at the library. This guy was 78 years old, sharp as a tack, and he told me he'd just finished reading a biography of Winston Churchill, his third book that month. When I asked him how he stayed so mentally sharp, he said something that changed my perspective completely. "Your brain is like a muscle," he said. "If you don't use it, you lose it. But if you keep challenging it, it keeps growing stronger." Frank wasn't doing anything complicated. He was reading, doing crossword puzzles, learning new things, having deep conversations with people. He was treating his mind like something precious that deserved attention and care. That conversation led me to start challenging my brain in ways I hadn't done in years. I picked up books I'd always meant to read. I started doing the daily crossword puzzle in the newspaper. I even signed up for a computer class at the senior center, something I'd been intimidated by for years. The results were remarkable. Not only did I feel mentally sharper, but I felt more confident, more curious about the world around me. I was having more interesting conversations with my friends and family. I felt like I was growing instead of just maintaining. This journey of discovery was teaching me something profound about this stage of life. We're not just trying to hold on to what we used to have. We're capable of developing new strengths, new interests, new sources of joy. The conversation I'm having with you right now is really about possibility, about the exciting truth that our best days don't have to be behind us. You know what really gets to me? The way we sometimes talk about getting older, like it's something that happens to us instead of something we participate in. I used to fall into that trap too, thinking that every year after 60 was just about managing decline and making the best of what was left. But the fourth thing I learned, and this one was a real game changer, is that connection with other people isn't just nice to have, it's essential for staying vibrant and healthy. I'm not talking about being social because you're supposed to be. I'm talking about the kind of real, meaningful connections that make you feel alive. I learned this lesson the hard way. After my retirement, I fell into a routine that was comfortable but pretty solitary. I'd get up, read the paper, putter around the house, watch some TV, go to bed, rinse and repeat. I told myself I was content, that I'd earned the right to a quiet life. But then my daughter suggested I volunteer at the local food bank. I'll be honest, my first thought was, I don't need another obligation. But something made me give it a try, maybe just to get her off my back. That first day at the food bank changed everything. I met people from all walks of life, some giving, some receiving, all of us just human beings trying to make a difference. There was something so energizing about working alongside others toward a common goal. I felt useful in a way I hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't just the volunteering itself, it was the relationships that grew from it. There was Eleanor, a retired teacher who could tell stories that had us all laughing until our sides hurt. There was Jim, a former mechanic who taught me more about fixing things in 6 months than I'd learned in 60 years. These weren't just people I worked with. They became friends who enriched my life in ways I never expected. The science backs this up, though I didn't know it at the time. Strong social connections actually boost our immune system, help us live longer, and keep our minds sharp. But you don't need to read research studies to know this is true. You can feel it when you're around people who genuinely care about you and who you care about in return. Maybe volunteering isn't your thing. That's perfectly fine. Maybe it's joining a book club or a gardening group or taking a class at the community college. Maybe it's becoming more involved with your faith community, or joining a walking group, or even just making an effort to have real conversations with your neighbors. The key is finding your people, the ones who share your interests, your values, your sense of humor, the ones who see you as you are right now, not as you used to be. These connections become like vitamins for your soul, keeping you engaged with the world and giving you reasons to look forward to tomorrow. This brings me to something that took me even longer to understand: the power of having something to look forward to. For years after retirement, I felt like I was in a holding pattern. I'd accomplished what I was supposed to accomplish, raised my family, done my job, and now what? Was this it? I remember having coffee with my old friend Bill, and he was talking about this photography class he'd signed up for. He was 68 years old and had never owned a camera beyond the basic point-and-shoot variety. When I asked him why he was starting now, he said something that stuck with me. Because I want to see the world differently. That phrase, I want to see the world differently, kept rolling around in my head. When was the last time I'd wanted to see anything differently? When was the last time I'd been excited about learning something new, trying something I'd never done before? It doesn't have to be photography. Maybe it's learning to paint, or finally taking that cooking class you've always thought about, or planning a trip to somewhere you've never been. Maybe it's writing down your family stories, or learning to play an instrument, or mastering that technology you've been avoiding. The magic happens when you give yourself permission to be a beginner again. There's something incredibly freeing about admitting you don't know how to do something and then learning anyway. It reminds you that growth doesn't stop at any particular age. It just looks different than it used to. I started small. I decided to learn more about the birds that visit my backyard. I bought a field guide, set up a feeder, and started paying attention. Before I knew it, I could identify a dozen different species, and I found myself looking forward to my morning coffee ritual of watching what would show up at the feeder. From there, I got bolder. I signed up for a Tai Chi class, something I never would have considered before. I joined a hiking group for seniors. I even started learning Spanish, thinking maybe I'd take that trip to Mexico I'd been talking about for years. Each new interest, each small adventure, each skill I developed gave me something to be excited about. I had projects to work on, goals to achieve, experiences to anticipate. I felt like I was living forward instead of just maintaining. But here's what surprised me most. These new interests didn't just give me things to do. They gave me new ways to connect with people. The other folks in Tai Chi class became friends. The hiking group introduced me to people I never would have met otherwise. Learning Spanish opened up conversations with neighbors I'd barely spoken to before. This is the beautiful thing about staying curious and engaged. It creates a positive cycle. New interests lead to new connections, which lead to new experiences, which spark new interests. Before you know it, you're not just passing time. You're actively creating a life that excites you. Now, if you've been listening to everything we've talked about, taking care of your body, eating well, exercising your mind, staying connected, and pursuing new interests, you might be thinking, that sounds great, but where do I even start? And that brings me to the fifth thing I learned too late, the one that ties everything else together. The fifth thing is this: small, consistent actions create big changes over time. I used to be an all-or-nothing person. If I couldn't do something perfectly, I wouldn't do it at all. If I couldn't exercise for an hour, I wouldn't exercise for 10 minutes. If I couldn't overhaul my entire diet, I wouldn't change anything about what I ate. This perfectionist thinking kept me stuck for years. I was waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect motivation to make changes. But perfect never came, and neither did the changes I wanted to see in my life. Everything shifted when I started thinking about my life like tending a garden. You don't plant a garden and expect it to be perfect overnight. You plant seeds, water them regularly, pull a few weeds, and trust that small daily actions will eventually create something beautiful. So I started small. Instead of committing to exercise for an hour every day, I committed to walking to the end of my street and back. Just that. Some days, that 10-minute walk felt so good that I'd keep going. Other days, 10 minutes was exactly what I needed. But either way, I was keeping my promise to myself. Instead of trying to eat perfectly, I made one small change. I added a piece of fruit to my breakfast. That's it. After a few weeks, when that felt natural, I made another small change. I started drinking more water throughout the day. Then I began adding a vegetable to my lunch. Each small change built on the others. The daily walks gave me more energy. The better nutrition made me sleep better. The better sleep made me more motivated to continue the healthy habits. It was like I'd started a positive spiral that kept gaining momentum. But here's the crucial part. I gave myself permission to be imperfect. Some days I didn't walk. Some days I ate junk food. Some days I felt tired or unmotivated or just plain grumpy. And that was okay. The goal wasn't perfection, it was progress. This approach worked for everything I wanted to change. When I decided to challenge my mind more, I didn't sign up for 5 different classes. I committed to reading for just 15 minutes before bed. When I wanted to be more social, I didn't try to become a social butterfly overnight. I started by making 1 phone call a week to someone I cared about. The beauty of small, consistent actions is that they don't require superhuman willpower. They don't disrupt your entire life. They just ask you to show up day after day in small ways that honor your commitment to yourself. And here's something wonderful that happens when you approach change this way. You start to trust yourself again. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you build confidence that you can keep bigger ones. Every small victory reminds you that you're not powerless, that you can shape your experience of life even at this stage. I think about my life now compared to where I was 5 years ago, and it's almost hard to believe they belong to the same person. I have more energy, better relationships, interesting hobbies, and a sense of excitement about what's coming next. None of this happened overnight, and none of it required dramatic changes. It just required consistency, patience, and the willingness to start where I was, instead of waiting for some day. You know what I wish I could tell my younger self? That life doesn't stop being an adventure just because you reach a certain age. If anything, this stage of life offers a unique kind of freedom. The freedom that comes from experience, from knowing yourself, from having less to prove and more to enjoy. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, this all sounds good, but I'm not sure I can do it. Let me tell you something. You've already done harder things than this. You've navigated decades of life, faced challenges, overcome obstacles, raised families, built careers, survived losses. You have strength you don't even realize you have. The question isn't whether you're capable of making positive changes. You absolutely are. The question is whether you're willing to be patient with yourself, to start small, and to trust that your future self will thank you for the small steps you take today. Remember, we're not trying to turn back the clock or recapture our youth. We're trying to make the most of exactly where we are right now, with all the wisdom, experience, and yes, even the limitations that come with this stage of life. Your body might not move the way it used to, but it can still move in ways that feel good and keep you strong. Your mind might work differently than it once did, but it can still grow and learn and surprise you. Your social circle might be smaller than it used to be, but it can be filled with deeper, more meaningful connections. This is your life, right now, today. Not the life you used to have, not the life you think you should have, but the life you actually have. And within that life, there are possibilities you haven't explored yet, joys you haven't experienced yet, connections you haven't made yet. Starting tomorrow morning, or maybe even this afternoon, you could take one small step toward feeling more vibrant, more engaged, more alive. It doesn't have to be a big step. It just has to be a step. Always remember to consult with your doctor before making any significant changes to your exercise routine or diet, especially if you have existing health conditions. Your medical team is your partner in staying healthy and active. You know what I'd love to hear? I'd love to know which of these ideas resonates most with you. Have you tried any of these approaches? What small step are you thinking about taking? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, someone who's ready to embrace this stage of life with energy and enthusiasm, please share this with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that our best chapters might still be ahead of us. Life after 60 can absolutely be filled with energy, purpose, and joy. The choice, as always, is yours.